Have you ever wondered how the story of Ishmael, Abraham's firstborn son with Hagar, intertwines with the divine promises and covenants that shape the biblical narrative? In this video, we'll explore Ishmael's journey from his birth to the lasting impact of his descendant. Ishmael was Abraham's firstborn, the result of his relationship with Hagar, an Egyptian servant of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Ishmael's story is deeply entwined with the promises and challenges faced by Abraham. God had promised Abraham that he would be the father of a great nation, even though he was already advanced in age. Sarah, who was barren, suggested that Abraham have a child with Hagar, his servant, following the custom of the time that allowed a servant to bear children for the barren wife, ensuring the continuation of the family line. Thus began Ishmael's biblical story. Ishmael was born when Abraham was 86 years old. The biblical texts show that Abraham had a deep affection for Ishmael and even pleaded with God for Ishmael to be the heir of the divine promise. However, the narrative takes a turn when Ishmael was about 13 years old. God reaffirmed his promise to Abraham, who was then 99 years old, promising him a descendant with his wife Sarah. Additionally, God commanded that all the men in the household be circumcised as a sign of the covenant. Ishmael was then circumcised at 13, a practice among various Arab tribes of the time, marking the transition to adulthood. The scene changes when, about a year later, Isaac, Sarah, and Abraham's biological son is born. Isaac's birth brought to the surface tensions between Sarah and Hagar. After becoming pregnant, Hagar despised Sarah, which led to conflicts and a family crisis. According to the customs of the time, a fertile servant was not to disrespect the barren wife, under penalty of being demoted. Sarah, therefore, had the right to punish Hagar for her disdainful behavior. Fearing Sarah's wrath, Hagar fled to the desert. However, the angel of the Lord found her and instructed her to return to Abraham's household. In the desert, the angel revealed that the child Hagar was carrying would be named Ishmael, meaning God heard, because God had heard Hagar's affliction, as stated in Genesis 16:11. Tensions between Sarah and Hagar peaked when Isaac was weaned. During the weaning feast, Ishmael mocked Isaac, provoking Sarah's indignation. She demanded that Abraham expel Hagar and Ishmael, as reported in Genesis 21. This request, however, went against the customs of the time, as Ishmael was considered a legitimate son of Abraham and, by extension, of Sarah, since he was fathered by her personal servant. In extreme cases, a son of a master with a servant could be demoted but not expelled. This request caused Abraham great distress. However, God comforted Abraham and assured him that he need not worry about Ishmael, promising to take care of him and ensure his great descendant. Although the biblical text does not detail Sarah's exact reasons for the request, it seems she viewed Ishmael as a threat to her own biological son's position. After receiving divine guidance, Abraham sent Hagar and Ishmael away, providing them with bread and water. When these resources ran out, Hagar, desperate, placed Ishmael under a tree and moved away to avoid seeing him die. Although we often picture Ishmael as a small child, he was likely a teenager of about 16 years old. In Genesis 21, God intervened again, helping Hagar and Ishmael and reaffirming his promise that Ishmael would be a man of great prosperity. They settled in the desert of Beersheba, and later in the desert of Paran. Although Ishmael did not inherit Abraham's primacy, he and the children of Keturah received material goods from the patriarch, as described in Genesis 25. This reflects Abraham's generosity, as he cared for all his children, even amid family complexity. The Bible does not mention further conflicts between Ishmael and Isaac in adulthood. In fact, in Genesis 25, Ishmael and Isaac are described as responsible for Abraham's burial, indicating a possible reconciliation, or at least mutual recognition. Ishmael became a notable hunter, skilled with a bow and arrow. Hagar found an Egyptian wife for Ishmael, with whom he had 12 sons and a daughter. Later, in Genesis 28 and 36, we learn that Ishmael's daughter married Esau, Isaac's son. The names of Ishmael's sons are listed in Genesis 25:13 through 15, and many of these names appear in other biblical passages as significant tribal families of the time. Ishmael's descendants often identified as Israelites in the Bible, were organized into 12 tribes that lived in mobile camps in the southern desert. Additionally, Genesis 25 informs us that Ishmael lived to the age of 137, though the location of his burial is not specified. Muslim tradition claims he was buried in Mecca. In the New Testament, Ishmael is mentioned especially by Paul in Galatians 4. Paul uses the figure of the servant's son to illustrate the difference between legalistic religious individuals and those born according to the Spirit, enjoying freedom in Christ. Over time, the name Ishmael became relatively common. Other individuals with this name are mentioned in the Bible, such as a descendant of King Saul and a high official during King Jehoshaphat's reign. Among the Ishmaels mentioned, the most well-known is Ishmael, son of Nethaniah, a member of David's royal house. During the Babylonian oppression of the Jews, it was this Ishmael who killed Gedaliah, the governor of Judah appointed by Nebuchadnezzar, as recorded in 2 Kings 25 and chapters 40 and 41 of the book of Jeremiah. In conclusion, Ishmael's story in the Bible provides a rich perspective on God's work and redemption. Although Ishmael was not the promised child to Abraham, he was blessed by God and received a great lineage, organized into 12 tribes. His life and descendants contrast with Isaac's story, highlighting God's supernatural power in allowing a 90-year-old barren woman to bear a child. This narrative illustrates the difference between birth according to the flesh and birth according to the Spirit, as emphasized by Paul in the New Testament. Subscribe to our channel, activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and share this content with friends who might also be interested.